in Ireland. In Ireland, there was a conflict between the British Empire and Irish people. Historically, the way they tried to portray the conflict was a religious conflict. Okay? But if you examine carefully the way the Protestants were constructed vis-a-vis the Catholics, we were talking here about the line of the human, defining once again the superior inferior, but marked not through color scheme, because there it was impossible to make a distinction based on the color scheme, but marked through religious categories and religious identity. So that was a racist conflict, a racist colonial conflict, but it was portrayed as if it has nothing to do with racism, and it was just a clash of religions. Okay? In fact, the Irish people were constructed as inferior beings relative to the Protestants, and the category used was Catholics. That was the identity used. And the way they constructed Catholicism in that context was as the zone of non-being, as inferior beings, okay, in the line of the human. So I'm saying this because if you examine this definition of racism, and you look at the debates going on today, both in Western Europe and in the US, Islamophobia is a form of racism because it's a way of marking, of making a mark between people who are becoming the savages, the inferior, the barbarians, the terrorists, the people who are below the line of the human, and people who are above. So Islamophobia becomes a form of racism in the moment it constructs the people, the Muslims, as part of the zone of non-being. And what has happened in America is that historically there was, for a long time, many Muslims who were part of the zone of non-being, and those were fundamentally African-American Muslims who were part of the zone of non-being over centuries in this country, and there were other Muslims who were part of being. And there was a conflict inside the Muslim community in America between those who were part of being, part of the superior, part of whose we might have conflict with them, but they are still in the zone of humanity, vis-a-vis those Muslims that were in the zone of the non-human. But what happened is with 9/11 is that now, in a very fast and rapid way, people who were classified in the zone of being, Muslims, were in the zone of being, suddenly they find themselves in the zone of non-being. Okay? And what is happening is that many of them are now surprised, because many of them were living the American dream, while there were a lot of Muslims living the American nightmare. And the point is that you don't have the American dream without the American nightmare. The two go together. If you look historically at this country, the two go together. The problem is that we celebrate and discuss the whole time the American dream, which is a white American dream, but we never talk about the American nightmare. And this is what took a lot of Muslims by surprise, because what happened was that a lot of them were living the American dream in the zone of being, with some minor conflicts with white America, but wanting to be white, and suddenly something happened here, and I think that moment is September 11th, where a lot of these Muslims wake up and find themselves in the zone of non-being. And that puts a situation now where that creates a possibility for alliances inside the Muslim community, but also across Muslim and non-Muslim who have been living in the zone of non-being in this country for a long time. And I'm talking about many Latinos, many Asian Americans, many African Americans that do not necessarily are Muslim. So now this creates a situation where there is some, it's a conjuncture where you have now a condition for possibility of broad alliances and struggle from the people who are now in the zone of non-being. And so I wanted to say that Islamophobia, if you examine carefully, it has a long today. That is, it's been there for centuries. If you look at the late 15th century, all the way till today, you could see Islamophobia there in many places around the world. we can start in 1492 with the expel of Muslims and the destruction of Al-Andalus in Islamic Spain by the Catholic monarchy in Spain. We could start from there, go all the way till today, and we can see Islamophobia as a major constitutive force, racist constitutive force of the modern colonial world. And one thing that we usually never discuss, because this goes together with the question of the racial ethnic hierarchies that we're talking about, is the epistemological question, which is that there is historically a Eurocentric fundamentalism that is the hegemonic way of producing knowledge in the humanities and the social science. What I mean by that is that if you look at the canon of thought in the Westernized university, okay, Westernized university, I'm being very particular, Westernized university, you will find it in Beijing, in Rio de Janeiro, in Dakar, in New York, or in Berkeley, okay, so it's a Westernized university. You look at the disciplines, and you look at the canon of thought, you will see there the reproduction of epistemic racism, that is, white European males being the center of the canon of thought, and everything else being inferior, including European women or Western women, okay? They're out of the canon. If you look, go to any department here in the humanities of the social science, here in the Westernized university, and you'll find what I'm telling you. Is a hierarchy in which Western males hegemonize the canon of thought of the disciplines. This is what I'll be calling Eurocentric fundamentalism. Why I call it fundamentalism? Because in my definition of fundamentalism, not in the one that is sold to you by the US government, in my definition of fundamentalist is everyone who thinks of their own epistemology as superior and everybody else as inferior. If you take that definition, Eurocentric fundamentalism is the most important, most dangerous fundamentalism in the world today, because not only they have the military and financial resources to impose themselves, but also it has become the common sense. That is, they have also the media as well as educational resources to impose itself as the hegemonic common sense and as the way of producing knowledge all over the Westernized university. So I'm saying this, I don't have time, but if you look, I mean, I have some work done about Marx, about Weber, about Durkheim, the classics of social theory, and you will find quotes from them that are terrible quotes, racist quotes that are completely Islamophobic. And what I want to say is that the social sciences and the humanities are built upon epistemic Islamophobia, which is a central constitutive force of knowledge production in universities today. And finally, just to say, one last point, that one thing that is scary about the current situation is that the framework, the institutional framework for a neo-fascist development in the United States is already there. The Bush administration has put forward an institutional framework that the Obama administration has not destroyed or changed. The Obama administration continued with that framework. And now, what is scary is that all it takes is the mobilization of some right-wing populist figure to put in place this framework in action and have a neo-fascist. I'm saying neo-fascist because it's not going to be the same old fascism. It's going to be a new form of fascism. And the point I want to say is that if you look carefully, it's already happening now under the Obama administration, because they are putting in jail and using counter-interpro tactics used against the Black Liberation Movement of the 60s, again in Muslim communities, Muslim mosques all over America. And they're putting in jail a lot of people with false and fabricated evidence. Okay? And this is happening all over the place right now. And the funny thing is that now you have also this kind of affecting also some of the anti-war movement people who have been also incarcerated in the last 3 weeks. You have every week raids in different parts of the country, Minnesota, Michigan, Texas, all over the place, and putting people in there and accusing them, because they are pacifists and mobilizing against war, accusing them of collaboration with terrorists. The framework is there. All it takes is to trigger it, and we are in a neo-fascist society.